This great awakening is not happening outside of you. It's happening inside of you. Don't look outside of you for this great awakening and these great changes. Look inside. Pay attention to what's happening in you. What's happening in you, you can put into two categories, love and fear. Love comes from parts of your personality that you experience as gratitude, appreciation, caring, contentment, patience, awe of the universe.
Welcome to the Dr. Espen podcast. I am Espen. Today I have the privilege and the pleasure of having a conscious conversation with Gary Zukav, the author of the book Seed of the Soul and several others. I remember many years ago when I first read this book, The Dancing Woolly Masters, which actually won the American Book Award of Science. This is talking about the overview of the new physics. I love how Gary makes complex scientific principles and spiritual concepts into something really easy to understand. When I read this book, I was mind-boggled, as I shared with Gary just before, as to why this is not taught in schools and why it's not so much more publicly available. But now it is becoming that because of the work that Gary's been doing. He's a 4-time consecutive best-selling author in New York Times from the book The Seed of the Soul. Definitely highly recommend this book. He's written Soul series, The Heart of the Soul, Emotional Awareness, and the list goes on and on. This has been published in over 24 different languages now, the book. And I think Gary's had over 30 plus appearances on the Oprah Winfrey Show. This is a podcast. This is an interview. This is a conscious conversation for you if you're interested in expanding your understanding of spirit, of love, and of course of metaphysics and quantum physics. And let's go deep within this conversation and see what magic we can experience today. Gary is also the co-founder of the Seed of the Soul Institute with his departed beloved Linda Francis as well. So I want to say special thank you, Gary. How are you today?
I am well, thank you, Espen. And Linda hasn't departed anywhere. Where would she go?
I understand. Would you elaborate?
Of course. My beloved, Linda Francis, had a stroke, and her soul returned home to non-physical reality 3 days later. And I'm not saying that my perception and my experience then was the same as mine now. It was very painful to me. I didn't know that pain could exist like that. But I have discovered that I had been taught that when a soul returns home, that is when it discards a personality. So to give you some background on this, I am speaking now of a context that is not conceptual for me, but that is experiential. And that is that we are now in the midst of an unprecedented transformation in human consciousness. It's never happened before, and it's happening very fast within a few human generations. And in fact, we're about halfway through it. So I'm interested in being on your podcast because I presume you're a millennial. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Millennials and Gen Z are both in a generation that was born with this new awareness. So when I say new consciousness to a millennial, they're probably going to say, as I describe it, well, that's consciousness. That's the way we are. But for people who were born into the old consciousness, it's not the way it was. And by it, I mean experience and perception. In the old consciousness, if something could not be detected by the 5 senses, it didn't exist. And there's still antiquated carryovers of this, many of them, in the world that we're now living. And that's why I really enjoy being on your podcast, because all of your fellow millennials were born with this new consciousness. But all of them, I feel, or many of them, sense that there's something very big happening, huge. And whether they articulate it that way or not, and they're right, it's a transformation of human consciousness.
I think many of us can indeed sense that.
How's that? What do you sense?
Well, I think if we're observing, speaking from my own perspective, if we look at what's happening in the world, I think we're going through a lot of clearing, a lot of healing. I mean, we can look to the end of certain time periods, the Kali Yuga, for example. We can look at what seems to be chaos and darkness in the world and recognize that that is perhaps what is being healed and what is being cleared. And I don't know about you. I mean, I think you're born 1947 or so. Is that correct?
42.
42. I'm born in 83. And the principles that my parents knew about consciousness were nothing. They had very little understanding in general about what consciousness is and what universal love is, who we are. And it was very limited. And then, then we have now, as you mentioned, people are born and awakening, and it's common to talk about emotions. It's common in my reality to talk about consciousness and breath and unconditional love. And as you mentioned, the soul the person hasn't left, they've just changed form or returned home. I don't think these are really esoteric conversations anymore. But having these conversations with my parents or their parents, it would have been dogmatic and certainly not received in that way. So I absolutely agree. I think it's becoming clear that we're going through an evolution of consciousness. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you. I wouldn't call it a healing, though, because I don't think anything was sick. But it is a new awareness. And the new consciousness makes the old consciousness obsolete. For example, electricity didn't make candle power negative. It just made it obsolete. It's the same thing with the old consciousness, except there is one major difference. The old consciousness and people who have it understand power as the ability to manipulate and control. That's the only way that a 5-sensory species could understand power. Mm-hmm. But in the new consciousness, power is experienced differently. It's the alignment of your personality with your soul. In other words, with harmony, cooperation, sharing, and reverence for life. And the millennials that I've met, and I'm making your group sound like my group is the baby boomers. It was everything. Well, your group is millennials, and now it's everything because your generation is coming of age. And the Gen Z is going to be everything when they come of age. And my point is that all of this is transient. All of this is temporary. But in the movement, I feel that millennials will benefit by understanding why the world isn't working anymore, how it is so broken, and how it cannot be fixed the way it has been fixed in the past, why that makes it even worse. And that's because the old world is based on external power, the old understanding of power, manipulation and control. And the pursuit of external power now produces only violence and destruction. And the new understanding of power, alignment of the personality and the soul, is not a gift like multisensory perception. It is a potential that comes with the new consciousness, and it has to be created. And that's what Linda and I share and have shared, authentic power. Another way of looking at it is the ability to distinguish love from fear in yourself and choose love no matter what's happening inside of you, such as despondency, despair, or what's happening outside of you, such as another 9/11 kind of event. I have spent my adult life creating authentic power, and it's been very helpful for me. I come from Kansas, which is a rural state in the United States, and I spent the most half of my adult life addicted to sex and macho. I was so insecure that I didn't know how insecure I was. That's the definition of macho. And now I'm different, not because I've been made different by believing differently, but by applying the tools of creating authentic power, which are emotional awareness and responsible choice. And there is no other way to create it. So do you have any questions about what I've said so far?
Excellent. No, I love this. And there is this concept of indeed the difference between the old consciousness and the perception that power equals control and money, which is what we can see in, many parts of the world and in certain control measures. And I remember, and I love your thoughts on this before we talk about authentic power. I know you speak about this, and I'd love to dive more into emotional intelligence and conscious choice. Someone said to me once, how come the power is in the hands of the controllers? And I said, well, that means that you define power by what you can see, potentially control, sometimes manipulation and money. I said, and my response was, who really holds the power though? If the power is divine consciousness, is it not something that we can access, all of us, from within? And so I guess it depends on how you define power. And I think this is a very, very important conversation right now in the rise of consciousness, or the transformation of consciousness on the collective level. Can you tell us a little bit more about this authentic power? You mentioned there are two primary parts that need to be in place for this to manifest within us.
Yes, and I'm not talking about a definition of power. I'm talking about an experience of power.
Mm-hmm.
Then the definition isn't conceptual. It's an observation. It's life. It's what you see. And as we become multisensory, which means we can experience more than the five senses, then our context shifts. It shifts from the world being entirely physical to the world being much, much more than physical. And that is essentially the new consciousness. Expansion of awareness beyond the limitations of the five senses, which makes conversations like this easy for you, easy for your generation, easy for younger generations, and for the most part, impossible for many of the older generations, because there is nothing in five sensory experience that can relate to what you and I are talking about. And yet what we're talking about is real. What we're talking about is a perception of self, yourself, that includes more than muscles and enzymes, mind and body. It includes a part of your personality that is immortal, that existed before you were born and that will exist after you die. And that's what we've been calling the soul. You can call it Atman or whatever you choose to call it. It's the experience, the knowing that you are more than your body and your mind, and you are. That's multisensory perception. And you can know things about yourself and other people that your five senses can't tell you. That's also multisensory perception. And you can learn about yourself from other people and from the world. It's not meaningless and random. It's meaningful, full of meaning. It's symbolic, and it's symbolizing what is important for you to see in yourself. So you look around in the world and you say, well, what is power? It is the leftover understanding of the old consciousness, the ability to manipulate and control. And it's confusing at first for five sensory individuals, because this is the very kind of power that was required for our evolution. We were a five sensory species that evolved by surviving, and we survived by pursuing external power. Now the pursuit of external power produces only violence and destruction. So we can't change a world that's built on external power with external power. That simply adds more to it. We can rent every billboard on every highway. You are divine. Look within. It won't do any good. It's consciousness that's changing. And as that changes, you change. And I'm on your show to say to your viewers and ours, pay attention to these changes in you. They are real. They are meaningful. Follow your meaning. And as you do, it will take you to experiences that cannot be explained by your intellect. Your intellect is not the appropriate or capable tool to communicate or express multisensory perception. Your intellect is designed to work with the five senses, to analyze them, the data that the five senses provide it, to compare the data, to sort it through, and to present to the personality the things that it discovers that will most help the personality pursue external power. When I attempted to use my intellect to understand or to even express the things that I was becoming aware of, it didn't work. It was actually painful. I had to make myself stop trying to understand, because I realized that for me and for many, the time has come for the cessation of understanding and to focus instead on the giving and sharing of joy. This doesn't mean that I don't have an intellect. I wrote a book on quantum physics that you mentioned. I graduated from Harvard. I know my zip code and I know my phone number. But this is just a tool now. This tool will not help me understand the things that are most important to understand. For example, we are accustomed to looking at things in terms of parts and relationships between them. There are no such things as parts, and there never have been. All is one. Let me put it this way. There is one, and all is that. And that's what we're beginning to experience. Now, at first, multisensory perception begins with this sense that I'm more than a body and a mind, and experimenting with those. It begins with intuition. Intuition is the voice of the non-physical world. And by the way, Espen, before I go further, I would like to say that I do not expect or even ask anyone who is listening to us to accept what I say as so, simply because I say it. And in fact, I would suggest that you not do that. That instead, if you resonate with anything that I say, experiment with it. Try it in your life. And if it produces what you want or something that's constructive for you, try it again. Experiment more. That's what you have a life for, among other things, is to experiment. And if you don't resonate with anything that I say, let it go. Don't try to wear a shoe that pinches. I'm sharing a window through which I've come to see life, and I hope that it will be helpful for you as well. And in that window, experience cannot be articulated with my intellect or even with language, which makes these kind of conversations sound paradoxical at times or foolish. But they're not. You are more than a body and more than a mind.
I love this.
There is one, and all is that. In other words, you are part of the universe. You are not separate from the universe. Nothing is. The universe is not separate from anything. What would it be separate from? If you and I are not separate, if you and I are both part of the universe, and both of those are so, we are one. Now that sounds like New Age fantasy, but it's not. It's the reality that we're entering, and it's a reality that we can use to practical effect. For example, many people are puzzled by the question, how can internal transformation lead to external change in the world? And that is because from the old consciousness, it can't. Within the old consciousness, there is an uncrossable barrier between in here and out there. And that makes it ridiculous to say that to change the world, you've got to change yourself, because the two are not connected. But from the new consciousness, they are the same. That uncrossable barrier between in here and out there in the old consciousness is not part of the new consciousness. And so, to change the world, it turns out that Gandhi was right. You've got to be the change. Because you changing the world assumes that you and the world are different. There's a relationship between you. There is no relationship between you because you're not separate. There is the world, there is your experience, but those two are not two, they are one. This is part of the new consciousness. Now, our new consciousness is not introducing these things immediately to everyone, but that's where it's moving us. It's moving us toward love. Authentic power is love. And creating authentic power requires some of the tools, both of the tools that you mentioned. But creating authentic power is learning how to create love, how to live a life of love. That means how to move through the world with an empowered heart without attachment to the outcome.
Oh, I love this. What do you think we can expect on a collective basis? I know this is something that we need to, or we can choose to be a part of, the journey from fear to love, from darkness to light, different decisions, showing up with an open heart, trusting, knowing that we're all connected in one. And if you were to look at, say, the timeline ahead, you said we're halfway through. What are your thoughts on the timeline that we're in, and also potentially the events that we may experience, or something to keep an eye out for? What are your thoughts?
Keep an eye out for what gives you meaning. Keep an eye out for what draws you to it. Keep an eye out for whether or not you are speaking or acting with love or with fear. I did talk about time, about this transformation of human consciousness happening very fast. Outside of the Earth School, let's use that term for this domain of time.
I love that term.
Space. Yes, time and matter and space and duality and fear. Because none of these four don't exist outside of the Earth School. Time is one of them, and it doesn't exist. So when we talk about time, it's more accurate and more healthy to talk about now. Now. There is no other except now. So don't worry about planning for your future. It doesn't exist. You will make plans. You will make those plans now. You can't make those plans in the future. The past is gone. There's only now. Now is the portal to everything that we're talking about. All of this is part of the new consciousness. And so I'll do my best to stop using that term now, because it's our consciousness. It's human consciousness. That's what's happening to us as a human species. There have always been people who have had this consciousness. Not many compared to the 7 billion of us that are on the planet now. Our planet now. It's not our planet. But very few have had this consciousness. The big change is this. All of the human species is now acquiring this new consciousness as one. That is what has never happened before.
Oh, that is cool.
Yes. Yes, that is very cool. No one has lived this way before. These few generations that we're in now are experiencing a time never before experienced. That is always true, by the way. But in this case, we are standing with one foot in the old consciousness and one foot in the new. And your life will always take you to circumstances that require a decision, and you're responsible for the decision you make, whether it's love or fear.
I love this. Is this the Great Awakening, Gary? What are your thoughts? Would you refer to it as that or something different?
Yes. Of course it is. Of course. It's never happened before. A Great Awakening in 7 billion people within 2 or 3 generations. This is what the Hopi prophecy is about. This is what the Lakota mean when they say, this is the day that will not be followed by night. This is what the Incas prophesied. This is what the prophecies of the indigenous people in the Amazon, in the Peruvian Amazon, which is the only one I know a little bit about. All of this was foretold a long time ago. How long ago? I don't know. Very long time ago. This is a Great Awakening. And here's the thing, Espen. It's happening in you. I'm speaking now to everyone who is listening to us. This Great Awakening is not happening outside of you. It's happening inside of you. Don't look outside of you for this Great Awakening and these great changes. Look inside. Pay attention to what's happening in you. What's happening in you, you can put into 2 categories, love and fear. Love comes from parts of your personality that you experience as gratitude, appreciation, caring, contentment, patience, all of the universe. They feel good, these experiences. When they come, they feel very good. And when you act on them, they create constructive consequences for you. When you look inside, you'll also find parts of your personality that originate in fear. Those are your experiences of jealousy, anger, rage, superiority, inferiority, competitiveness, resentfulness, and every obsession and compulsion and addiction. When you experience these, you will feel painful physical sensations inside your body. For example, in your throat, in your chest area, and in your solar plexus area. 7 of these areas in all. That will tell you that you are experiencing fear. It's not always evident. You can be jealous, for example, and not be aware that you're jealous, but your body will not lie to you.
Coming back to the Dancing Woolly Masters, and when I read this, I got this incredible truth bump, I call it. My intuition was speaking to me that we're onto something here. And you explained quantum physics in such a way that gave me hope and an excitement. I want to ask you specifically, you mentioned the 7 areas. Are you referring to the 7 chakras or the 7 energy centers? If so, can you talk about the subtle energy bodies and what you found throughout your research as such?
Number 1, your first question, yes. In the East, these energy processing centers are called chakras, which is a Sanskrit term. But since we are English speakers, we can say they're energy processing centers. And when energy comes into your body through the crown of your head and down to your torso and back up again, it passes through them. And as it does, it's processed. And if it's processed in fear, you are losing energy in fear. And it produces painful physical sensations in those areas of your body. Those parts of your personality, you could say dynamics or parts of your personality that originate in fear or that generate fear are always thinking, cognizing, judgmental thoughts. Oh, why are they teaching me this? This is so elementary. I know all of it already. Or this is way over my head. I can't ever get this stuff. Or he's so stupid. Or I'm so stupid. These are the thoughts that frightened parts of your personality think. And they think, and in your energy processing centers, you feel painful physical sensations, aching, throbbing, churning, burning, stinging, stabbing, contracting. Not things like I'm happy, joyful, bubbly. Physical sensations, and they're painful. When you're in a frightened part, a loving part of your personality and experiencing gratitude or contentment, the physical sensations in your energy processing centers are all blissful. They're the kind of physical sensations you like more of. And the consequences you will create for yourself are constructive, healthy, meaningful. Now, when you can do this, and looking inside yourself in this way is the emotional awareness that I mentioned. It's not emotional intelligence. That was a beautiful book that was timely in its day to draw people's attention to what's happening emotionally inside them. But it's not intelligent. It's observation. And in fact, that book was to help people use their emotions to accomplish more, to pursue external power, to move up in your job, to get along with your coworkers. Emotional awareness is not that. It is somatically experiencing the emotional energy in your body so that you can recognize love and fear. These are messages from your soul, and they tell you that fear is active in you now or love is active in you. And if fear is active in you, then you can use your volition, your free will, to move your attention into a loving part of your personality, into a time when you knew you were loved or loving or both, and choose to act from that part of your personality while you are experiencing the painful physical sensations and judgmental thoughts of the frightened part of your personality. That is the moment of creating authentic power. That's where the rubber meets the spiritual road. And as you do this again and again, you begin to move beyond the control of that frightened part of your personality until it's no longer a part of your personality. This is the process of creating authentic power. And this is the evolutionary pathway, the evolutionary requirement of the species that's now being born.
So it's a choice.
Yes, exactly. You've gone to the heart of it immediately. The heart of it is choice. We are powerful and creative, compassionate and loving spirits. And let me put that personally. You, Espen, you listening to this podcast, you are a powerful and creative, compassionate and loving spirit. And the pain in your life is a measure of the distance between this reality and your self-image.
Oh, I like that. What are your thoughts, Gary, on when I finished from clinical practice in 2016, I was burnt out. I had a lot of money, but I was very, I would say sick. I wasn't sick. I know the concept. I get it. There was interference. Okay. There was mental interference, emotional interference, and there was physical interference. So I traveled down to Peru, and I have spent many years now with learning about different lineages around the world. You mentioned the Lakota tribe and so on and so forth. And I've seen that a lot of these, the Hopi traditions.
And the Q'ero tribe in Cusco.
Exactly. And some of their teachings. And it seems like these traditions and teachings and overall wisdom from around the world all speak to the same thing, which is this so-called Great Awakening that we're discussing. I found a template from the ancient yogic traditions that show that these energy processing centers are blocked not only by, but primarily by lower frequency emotions. So we have fear blocking the first processing center, guilt blocking the second, and shame blocking the third, etc. And it seemed to be interesting when I studied the Hawkins scale, for example, of the different states of vibratory bandwidths of certain emotions. So I'd like to ask your opinion on this. What do you believe, apart from the things that we've already discussed, Gary, fear and the lower states, if you will, what do you think are some of the primary interference patterns standing in our way of this next step in the human evolution?
Fear. That's what stands in the way. Love is where we're going. Love is our destination and our journey. I don't experience them the way that you've been taught as patterns or interference or blockages. Energy moves through you. It's a matter of how it's processed in each of the chakras. And you can associate, if it's helpful, anger with this one, shame with that one, superiority with another one. But the energy is moving. The question is, how are you using the energy as it passes through these different chakras? Is it being released from you in fear? That's painful and destructive. Or is it being released from you in love? That's constructive and blissful. An authentically powerful individual releases his or her energy in love. That is the development, the creation of authentic power.
Do we accumulate energy? I mean, we look at something like the ancient Chinese path of accumulating prana, chi, life force, etc. We know the energy flows through the crown center, our connection to God, our connection to source, and it goes through our energy processing centers and it interacts with this three-dimensional reality. Do you feel like there's a concept here where we can accumulate energy and do such a thing, or is this simply a matter of processing?
I think you're a bit in your mind, Espen.
That I am.
Yes, you are.
And maybe some of our listeners and viewers too, so do entertain us if you will.
Oh, I do believe that is the case, because the law of attraction is that energy attracts like energy. And there will be people listening to us who are filled with concepts, esoteric concepts, aboriginal concepts, religious concepts, scientific concepts. As the new consciousness emerges in you, these concepts begin to be less and less interesting than the experiences that are occurring in you. And as you pay attention to the experiences rather than the conceptual framework in which you are sorting them all out, you can begin to feel yourself change, experience changes in yourself. I am delighted at the infinite diversity with which insight, wisdom, love, compassion, and meaning come. It's unlimited. So if you're drawn to whatever it is that's meaningful to you, experiment with it. But your mind is not going to take you where you want to go. Your heart will take you all the way home. And in other words, this is an interesting path for a moment. The frightened parts of your personality, if you act on them, will take you where the frightened parts of your personality want to go. The loving parts of your personality, if you act on them, will take you to what you already are: grateful, appreciative, content, in awe of the universe. You are experiencing the energy of your soul in those moments. When will you do it again? Or are you going to simply let those moments go as transient, ephemeral, good-feeling experiences that I had 2 days ago? Maybe it was 3. I don't remember exactly what it was. Don't let it go to that, because it will. But another one will come, and you can cultivate that when it does. Creating authentic power is a matter of cultivating love, benchmarking it, going back to it, so that when you're in a frightened part, you can choose to go back to that loving part before you speak or act. That's creating authentic power.
Yeah, and this is where choice comes in again, like we mentioned before, making the decision to act with love and to respond with love and to remember who we are, which is love.
As my grandmother would say a long time ago, bingo, that's it.
I love how I was in my mind and you just make it so simple. Very, very beautiful, and thank you. May I ask you, sir, what about the different dimensions? There's a lot of discussions now in quantum physics and metaphysics, pertaining to the concept of we are multidimensional, eternal beings having a temporary human experience in, the third dimension. Are we ascending? Call it a different thing. Are we expanding? Are we embodying or now receiving this newer consciousness as we bypass the so-called fourth dimension, call it time, into the fifth dimension? What is and again, this is an intellectual thing, and I know I'm in my mind, but I would love to know what your belief and research has shown based on who we are, the different dimensions, and potentially what is happening right now.
There is no should or better or worse in any of the things that I have suggested. If you choose to act from a frightened part of your personality, you create a different set of consequences than if you choose to act from a loving part of your personality. One's not better or worse than the other. The universe doesn't look in terms of better, worse, good, bad. It looks, if you want to put it in those terms, in terms of cause and effect. If you participate in a cause, you will participate in the effect. In the East, that's karma. But as you create authentic power, you begin to connect the dots between your choices and your experiences. Your choices of what? Your choices of intention. And intention is a quality of consciousness. If you act or speak with love, you bring that quality of consciousness into the earth school, into your life. That is the moment that energy becomes matter. That is the moment that karma happens. If you bring the energy of fear into your deed or your words, that is the quality of consciousness that infuses your deed and your words. And it creates painful, destructive consequences. From the point of view of the universe, if there were such a thing, neither of those are better or worse. So it's a matter of your choice. What will you choose? You're not going to be rewarded if you choose one or punished if you choose the other. One of the most terrifying experiences in my life was when I was looking at my addiction to sex. I was with a woman that I wanted to be with. And she said, "You've got a problem, and you got to fix that problem if you want to be with me." And she was talking about my attraction to sex. And I said to myself, well, no, I'm a loving person. When I meet a loving woman, we make love. Isn't that the way it's supposed to happen? Not according to her. She said, "You've got a problem, and you've got to fix it." So I went through the process of sorting through, well, I don't think I have a problem, but she thinks so, and so I'm going to look at it. Oh, it's a little problem, but it's not. Well, it's bigger than that. Well, oh my God, I can't stop. I'm out of control. That's when the work could begin. And there's a chapter about this in the Seat of the Soul on addiction. That chapter is about addiction to sex, but you can apply the same experiences and dynamics to an addiction to alcohol, drugs, food, sex, shopping, gambling. It's not the addiction that is of import. It is the fear underneath it, the pain underneath it. And that's where the work is. And I explored that. I went through that addiction from the beginning. I entered it, I went through it, and out the other side, as consciously as I could. I discovered things, for example. I asked myself, is it possible for me to make a temptation that's stronger than I can resist? The answer is yes, I can do that. That's how I would give myself unconsciously permission to behave unconsciously. And I came to a place, Espen, when I realized I'm the only one here to make this decision. There's no one else here that's going to make it. And not only that, there is nothing. My attraction to one was equal to my attraction to the other. And there was no one there and nothing there to lean me in one direction or another. If I chose to continue with my behavior, there would be learning in that path, and I would gain from it. I could choose to stop that behavior, and there would be learning from that path, and I could choose to take that one. The power was entirely in my hands. As you go into your awareness and into your consciousness, you'll find that at every moment, that is the case with you. And as you become aware of it, we are each at that powerful, pregnant, fertile moment of choice. That's why you hit the bingo. Choice. What are you going to choose? Love or fear? Not to go to heaven and avoid hell. Not to become more wealthy or less, to gain sex recognition. But because it's what you choose, and what you choose, you experience. And in non-physical reality, they happen at the same time. Your intention is what? Is one with who and what you are. In the Earth School, an intention takes time to work its way through physical matter. But you grow by watching your experiences and your intentions and beginning to connect the two. Karma assists you in this, more than assists you. Karma is the great impersonal teacher of responsibility. You will experience what you have caused others to experience. And when it comes, you might say, what did I do? I didn't intend this, but you did. You were not aware of your intention when you said it and acted on it. If you're not aware of your intention, it comes from fear. Every unconscious intention, which means if you don't know why you're acting or speaking, it's coming from fear. Love requires conscious intention. You cannot accidentally stumble onto love. It requires a conscious choice. And that's what you're learning how to do. That's what we're all learning how to do.
Love is the answer, indeed.
I just want to keep correcting these things that pop automatically into your mind as an amalgamation of all that has made sense before. Love is not the answer. I love that song, but it's not the answer because there's no question. Love is. The universe is love. Love and the universe are not separate. Here's a poem. I just wrote it last night and now I can't recite it to you accurately. But the essence of it is this. There is love and there is intention. The intention is love. Love is the intention. The two are not separate. They are one. I am that. You are that at each moment. And you will never stop evolving. It's not as though once we see the picture, we've got it. I've got it. Evolution never stops. The universe is evolving. You are evolving. I am evolving. The evolution is infinite. But it's not a matter of step by miserable step with pain and suffering and gaining knowledge and leaving knowledge behind and getting into insight. It is stepping. It is relaxation. It is relief and release from all of that. Clean, clear, simple. And it never stops. We experience it as overwhelm because we resist it again and again and again. But in non-physical reality, it is experienced as a never-ending bloom of a flower beautiful beyond imagination that continues and continues and continues, and in each moment brings joy and joy and joy.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, I stand corrected. I was seeing it from the aspect of the seeker.
Yes, and I didn't mean to criticize, but simply to offer another perspective.
Of course.
The seeker, from this perspective, the seeker and the sought are the same. The actor and the action are the same.
Beautiful. What are your thoughts on the different dimensions in metaphysics or quantum physics? As in, are we multidimensional, having a temporary three-dimensional experience?
I'll answer your question as best I can. I'm not interested. They're not interesting to me at all.
Okay.
What's interesting to me and what I have learned is what can help me use my experiences, not use them to gain something, unless it's compassion, unless it's love. What's useful is to help one another use their experiences, use their insight and wisdom to see their experiences in ways that make them more meaningful and loving. Other than that, it's not theory. Now, everyone has a belief system. You can't not have a belief system. So I think that you should put some attention on this and choose the best belief system for yourself. There are quite a few options. I would suggest that you start looking at those belief systems that do not contain fear. If the belief system that you're experimenting with or exploring contains fear, I'd suggest you look for another one. And in fact, I'd suggest you look at the belief system that I've been sharing. That the universe is alive, wise, and compassionate. That you are a powerful and creative, compassionate, and loving spirit. That you cannot make a mistake. You cannot choose incorrectly. Everything you choose creates consequences in your life, and you learn from them. And this process has no end. Although it's different beyond the Earth School than it is in the Earth School. But there, my beloved Linda, I loved her incarnation. I loved everything about it. I loved her playfulness, her brilliance, her connection, her amazing ability to connect with people, and her passion to do that. But that's gone, Espen. It's ashes and dust. I've even got the ashes. I don't know what to do with them. I mean, it's not here. But the soul, the energy that animated that incarnation is here. I love it. And I'm with it. So questions about third, fourth, fifth, eighth dimension, which is true, they're beside the point. They originate here. My Sioux uncle, Linda and I were adopted into the Lakota tradition. And my uncle, Lekshi, it's just a term, uncle, he said, Toshka, nephew, the longest journey you're going to make in your life is from here to here. And for those listening without video, he took his fingers from his forehead and put them on his chest. And I found that he was right. That is a long journey. And yet, there's no distance. Yet, it happens. And from a larger perspective, there is no you that has taken the journey. And what has come before, and what is present now, and what will come after, in every way that can be imagined and those that can't, is already here, now, happening.
Aho, as they say. I've got one final question for you, sir, if I may.
Of course. You may ask me as many as you want.
Thank you so much. I want you to imagine that you're presenting, speaking, sharing, and every sentient being alive has gathered. They're watching, they're listening, and tuning into your message to the world. When you're ready to share, Gary, please, what is your message to the world right now?
Love yourself. That's the same as loving the world. I could say love the world, and you're loving yourself. There is only love. That's the message. Eventually you will come to understand that love heals everything, and there is only love. And that audience that you described is always present to me, and it's always present to you. What is your message to that audience, to the world, to the universe that you are creating?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, the book called The Dancing Woolly Masters, an overview of the new physics. Right here beside me, that book has been by my side for years now, so definitely check that out. And already, if you have felt the power of these messages, the power of what has been shared, you've allowed your intuition to tune into it, and you want to explore this further, I would highly recommend getting a copy of the book or the audiobook, The Seat of the Soul, Soul Series, The Heart of the Soul, and so on and so forth. And I want to thank you again.
Oh, may I, Espen, also say that we've started a new program that I like very much. It's called An Evening with Gary Zukav. And once a month, we have a conversation like this, except that it's a subscription program. And when you subscribe, it's only month by month. You don't have to sign up for a long time. But some people stay quite a while. The difference is we have talks like this, but you get to answer, you get to ask me the questions. Espen is asking the questions now. So if you're interested in any of the things that I've shared, our website is the name of the book, seatofthesoul.com. It's got lots of free material, lots of paid material, lots of things. All of them have the same purpose, to support you in creating authentic power. So I suggest you go there. If you want to know about Linda and my experience as she left the Earth School, in the menu, there is an option, the celebration of Linda Francis, and that will take you to a video, the celebration of Linda Francis, that our support team and I co-created when we were in shock and pain and missing her and appreciating her. And also 11 personal messages that I wrote at the time that Linda's soul was going home, because I wanted to share these things as they happened in me, as they unfolded. And I invite you to look at them and see if they are of any value to you. I hope they are. That's my intention with all of the things that I share now.
Seatofthesoul.com. Thank you, Gary. It's a beautiful message, and what an incredible conversation to have. I will make sure that this goes out to as many people as possible. And again, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for the guidance that you've provided for me personally as well during this conversation. Kind of slow down my busy mind and tune back home for a bit. I'm really grateful. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Until next time, Gary Zukav, everybody.